listening to the Tom Ficklin Show on WNHHLP 103.5 FM.
Thank you. Harry, let's hear a little bit more of let's have Zach keep on going. I really love that. Don't you like that song, Brian?
Yes,
yeah.
Nice.
And it's created just for us.
Right, that's right.
So again, this is the Tom Ficklin Show, and that was Zach Carter. Kind of Zach's on SoundCloud and iTunes, and Zach Carter, and I was just mentioning Brian. Brian's been teaching it. My guest this morning is Reverend Brian Bellamy, the senior pastor of Friendship Missionary Baptist Church. You've been teaching at UNH for 10 years? 10 years. 10 years, and I'm a newbie, and I just mentioned to Brian before we started that Zach Carter, who we just heard from, was a student of mine, public communication and public speaking, the fundamental communication course he gave me, which I really loved, and just to have him, I mean, almost all the students wrote something, Brian, that was talented and gifted and personal and authentic, but when Zach kind of, I just threw it out with us. I said, Zach, we need the class song. We need a theme song, and he came up with this, man. But of course, he has a history. Again, go to Zach Carter on iTunes and SoundCloud, and you'll see his expertise. But this kind of reminded me that we tend to stereotype and categorize people, community college students, blah blah blah, and just not to really appreciate the gifts that all of us possess. Again, this is the Tom Ficklin Show. It's really such a pleasure to have Brian Bellamy with me, the Reverend Brian Bellamy, senior pastor of Friendship Missionary Baptist Church. It's located at 26 Edward Street. And although it's in Hamden, it's really on the Hamden-New Haven line, I think.
It is. The parking lot is New Haven.
So, and not to be confused, because there's another Edward Street in properly situated in New Haven.
Correct.
But you're properly situated in Hamden.
Right.
And again, in some ways, we're one planet, one world. In fact, you taught it, as I referenced, for 10 years. I believe the title of the department is Global Studies.
Global Studies, right.
So you're a global citizen as well. And Brian is a graduate of the Yale Divinity School at Morehouse and Harper Seminary. And then you were in London eating tea and scones or something. I mean, you took your family over there. And so what was going on about that?
Right. So my PhD program was with Hartford Seminary in conjunction with the University of Exeter. So the PhD came from the University of Exeter. And so this December, after completing my program, we traveled there for commencement. I defended September 5th for the PhD, and we traveled to the UK. And it was around Christmas time. We went to the winter commencement. Mm-hmm. And so while we were there a few extra days, we enjoyed some of London and Southwest England, which is where the University of Exeter is located. So we had a great time.
Yes, I mean your Facebook page kind of shows. I'm not sure if Ashley or your mom's one as well, didn't she?
My mom and my mom's sister.
See, and that's really such. We're going to talk about a variety of things, Brian. We have about 48 minutes. Something I am going to give you a chance to speak, believe it or not. Just going to give you a chance, but we might, if time permits, at least talk about it. After what happened, Brian, is people can access the show in a variety of formats, and I'll put a lot of links of things we might just talk about or not talk about, or we have not had a chance to talk about in great detail. But we're going to have the Black Liberation Ball. We're going to get a chance to talk about that in depth. Some James Conklin up there, et cetera. Your years at Morehouse and your interim president that passed away at Morehouse. I know you attended various the doctor that's going to elaborate on that. You use the word called defending. I don't think people realize that it's not that you have to wear an armor plate suit or go into battle, but it is a mental battle, and you can't lose the battle. I mean, you really are defending. It does happen after all those years of preparation, et cetera. Your first sermon, I like to kind of chat about, maybe we'll possibly your conversion experience that you remember about when you decided to walk the path that you've been walking so excellently. Black Church and Trauma, even, and as I mentioned, Black Liberation Theology with James Cone, and perhaps even something called church politics. You've experienced that in growing up as a boy. You're experiencing it now as a senior pastor. So where would you like to kind of plunge in?
Wherever you'd like to start.
Okay. All right. What's been on my heart and mind is just knowing someone that has given back to the community for so long, and what's kept you really really excited and enthused. I mean, today's Monday. What did you preach about yesterday? For example, yesterday, every Sunday, people take for granted, perhaps not knowing that a minister every Sunday you have to say something.
Right.
It might be the same thing,
Right.
in a variety of ways, but still, there's some credibility and kind of belief system and energy that you expected. So share with us a little bit about the topic of
Sure.
yesterday or the past week. Your church motto in the past has been, I really was impressed with that for 2016, pursue, overtake, succeed. So
Sure.
yeah.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. One thing about being a pastor is that you realize how close together those Sundays are. Right now, I am in a series that we're going to continue through the summer months at Friendship Church on the power of influence. I do not think we realize the power that we give people when we invite them into our circle. When you invite someone into friendship or relationship, you then give them creative power over kind of like shaping or even redirecting your energy, redirecting your focus, so that we end up being, the sum total of the five people we're closest to. I'm sure you've heard that before. And so this summer, we're just going to be expounding on various passages that teach us first to be careful of who we allow into our sphere of influence, and then how to be intentional about who we invite into those spaces, which we should see as privileged spaces. So yesterday was International Children's Day. And so the children kind of led the service. They led the responsive reading and the announcements, and we had our young dancers, liturgical dancers, and the children's choir sang. And normally I would invite a younger speaker to come and share. But yesterday I decided to continue the series, and I wanted to talk to the children. We also have children's church at Friendship. We started that a couple of years ago because growing up in the church, I'm aware that you can come to church every Sunday and totally have, much of the teaching pass over your head because children have short attention spans. And I think that is why in the church, you have these kids who grew up as church babies, and then as soon as they get old enough, they leave and don't come back, or they choose a different path. And that's because although they've been there, no one has really engaged them on their level. So we have children's church to engage the children on their level. But yesterday we kept them in the sanctuary with us so that I could take some time to talk to them about being intentional and who they choose as friends, because right now they are really setting the path for where life is going to take them, and their friends and who they choose to be friends with, that can direct or redirect what God has in store for them. I shared a personal story. You mentioned Morehouse. When I got to college, that was my first time ever being away from home. And I am a native of New Haven, Connecticut. I was born in Yale New Haven Hospital. I am thoroughly New Haven, and I love my city. Right. And so that was my first time away from home. And most people in that space or opportunity, they take the opportunity to party or stay out late and do things that they never got a chance to do, living with their parents. But one of the things that happened to me was I had a roommate who would come home or come to the room after class every day at 3 o'clock, and for 4 or 5 hours he would start studying. And so as to, be courteous and not be disruptive in the room, I ended up doing the same thing. And so just in who became my roommate, that then made me more studious. And so, at the end of that semester, I was on the dean's list, and I stayed on the dean's list all 4 years and finished magna cum laude.
Yeah, that's right. Did he graduate as well, magna cum laude?
Yes, he did.
Okay.
Right. And so I don't know if that would have been the case if I had a different roommate, but that is an example of the power of influence. If you have the right people in your lives, they can direct you toward positive things, but if you have the wrong people, they'll lead you down a wrong path. So that's what we're talking about this summer. So that's what we kind of tried to pour into the young people yesterday at Friendship Church.
Drill down a little more, because ethics and philosophy is something that you've been teaching in a variety of ways, in a variety of contexts, not only in UNH, and not only in church, in terms of Bible school, Bible study, but even just in your daily walk. But help me in terms of locate, again, you listen to the Tom Ficklin Show, but locate why now in 2017? What kind of came across your spirit or soul or instinct why now? If I can ask that question, you might say, I mean, what you talked about is that would be consistently important since man or woman kind of came on the planet. But was there anything now about the contemporary landscape that kind of influenced this thematic kind of pursuit that you've undertaken?
Well, certainly we see a lot going on in the world. I don't know that there's ever not a good time to focus on the power of influence. But I do think that on the political landscape, we've seen those who hate and who are exclusive. They and their kind of vitriol, they become more bold. And it has then empowered others to come forward with their hatred. And so certainly we see all kinds of toxic influences from the highest levels of power down. So we see that in society, but I don't think that there's ever not a good time to be careful of who you are allowing to pour into you and to shape your identity. Yeah.
Absolutely. You listen to the Tom Ficklin Show, for those of you that just tuned in, and we're going to be with you for another 40 or so minutes. And Reverend Doctor, I really love saying that, Reverend. I mean, you were a doctor in some ways even before, but now you're Doctor Squared. But Reverend Dr. Brian Odom, Bellamy, Senior Pastor of Friendship Missionary Baptist Church, you're with us on the Tom Ficklin Show, located at 26 Edward Street in Hampton, just as though Hampton became a line, kind of the dual Gilbert versus schools that you're lower Hampton, but you got Southern Hampton,
Southampton,
Southampton,
South side,
but somewhere on the planet. And Dr. Bellamy has a Master's of Divinity degree from Yale, also in 2005. Then in 2006, Master of Sacred Theology from in Conservation Religious Ethics at YDS. But then just most recently now Doctor of Philosophy and Theology and Ethics at the University of Exeter / Harvard Seminary. Tell us about your defending your thesis, because this I referenced those kind of years in academia, and you're still kind of you're still involved with academia in terms of teaching. Your thesis, your final paper, what kind of directed you there, and what's the outcome of this? Just something that's not up on the shelves, or just something that's still stimulating you in terms of your comments and development?
Yeah, sure. So I'm working on refining it for publishing, but my thesis was entitled "An Examination of Community Engagement by the Black Churches in the 21st Century." And what first turned me on to this investigation was, I believe it was like 2010 or 2011, Eddie Glaude out of Princeton published an article saying that the Black church was dead because our prophetic witness has diminished, and that the only credibility we have is in our history, that there's not much going on now. And so, being raised in the Black church and then serving in a Black church, at that time I was a youth pastor at Christian Tabernacle in Hampton. I knew that this was not the case. I knew that the church was alive and well and active, and yet I wanted to, in an academic way, kind of do an investigation of his ideas. And so what I did was I chose local models. I had to go through almost all of Black church history and community engagement, which happens in several waves. So we see the Black church first among the hidden institutions of the slaves, and so that's Albert Rabbitoe's research, and John Blassingame. And then we see the institutionalized church in the antebellum North with the founding of the AME Church, and then certain other churches. So, for example, in local models, we have the Dixwell Church. That's right. So we have those independent congregations that split from white congregations. So we have that period. But then, right after slavery, we have a solid denomination building period, because then the Black Methodist groups can go into the South and organize. And then you have Black Baptist churches that are forming conventions in the South. And then past that, we have the civil rights movement, where there's engagement of the social and political structure. And then even into in the 70s, although there's a conservative retrenchment in society, churches are doing like CDCs and still engaging their communities for improvement. And so what I found in kind of doing that work is that in the 21st century, the most predominant ways that churches are engaging their communities would include still through CDCs, although that's kind of ebbing. We also still see those activist style groups, grassroots groups, and then we also have mega churches. Now that excludes a lot of particular groups, but what we find is that even in the ways like, let's say, a friendship church engages the congregation, it will be subsumed in some of the larger programs of these groups. And so I did some research into each of these groups. I had to pick a particular group, and so I picked all local groups. And so I chose to research mega churches. First Cathedral with Archbishop Bailey, who was so kind as to let me come and interview him and his staff several times and to share information.
And they're Baptist from Genesis.
They have Baptist roots, and they still participate in the Connecticut State Missionary Baptist Convention and American Baptist Churches in Connecticut. Then for the CDC model, I interviewed Bishop Brooks, Beulah Heights Church, and then for grassroots, I interviewed Donald Morrison. And so each of them formed a chapter of my research.
Christian Community, Donald with Christian Community Commission, he does.
Christian Community Commission, right. And so in choosing local models, I was able to, over like a year and a half, 2 years, continue to go back and to continue to get research. And I did grounded theory, and that means I used their own words to form theories, and then I corroborated those theories with them, because I think one of the issues with researching Black folks is very often we are object and not subject, and so I wanted them to be able to form their own ideas. And what we found is that each of these groups, in their own ways, although no group is without criticism, each group in their own ways, they are still engaging their communities. And so that was pretty much the gist of my research.
Listen to the Tom Ficklin Show, and Harry Drawden, our station manager, doing a tremendous job. Harry, good to see you. I've been offered a few variety of things. We're chatting with Reverend Dr. Brad Bellamy, senior pastor of Christian Missionary Baptist Church. Brad, on the topic that you just mentioned, but where does that leave you? And I appreciate your sharing. Were you writing just for Eddie, to refute Eddie, or to expand on Eddie, but who the audience?
You know, he might be like a footnote in the introduction. So certainly his essay sparked the idea, but the general audience is the church itself, and you know, the academy that is focused on the church to kind of see what we have done as far as community engagement and where we are now. And then there are certain precautions that we kind of signal, or that I kind of signal at the end. And that is, for example, one major issue that we see, and Cone kind of talks about this in Black Liberation Theology, is that our churches are leaning more toward a transcendent focus. And so if you look at the cross goes up and down, but then it reaches out. And so we are focusing on the part of the cross that goes up and down. So we're really good with having a quote unquote personal relationship with God, but then in what ways are we reaching out? And so an example of this would be all of the groups focus on acts of charity, where they kind of put Band-Aids on people's particular issues, but no one is really addressing, very few groups are addressing systemic issues. And so we do not have very many established Black churches, for example, that are participating in Moral Monday.
And so Reverend Barber has talked about his leaving the report about no longer being president of the North Carolina and reviving of the moral movement, if you will. And Reverend Barber is spoken at the Divinity School. So you look forward to supporting him locally. I know Mr. Reverend Sellers of the Market area, Selders rather.
Yes.
So you look forward to being that New Haven disciple as well for the moral movement.
I'm absolutely open to it, and I think that, you know, these kinds of movements can only be strengthened with church participation. But we've always kind of had this dynamic in the Black church where we have a segment that is politically active and a segment that is more subdued. I mean, I'm a part of the Progressive National Baptist Convention. That convention split from National Baptist Convention USA over this very same issue. Martin Luther King, who was trying to get, NBC USA to participate in the civil rights movement, became frustrated because, they refused, and then the president at that time, Joseph Jackson, intentionally kind of pulled away from King and his group and their issues, and so that there were a lot of meetings and discussions and arguments. And in 1961, a smaller but significant portion of Black Baptists started a different convention because they said, we have this call by Christ to focus on social justice. And so we've always had this dynamic in the church.
I did mention church politics, but I did not know that you were going to go there on the macro and the micro level. We'd be here forever. Right. I really appreciate your sharing with that, because people will ask often, just whether you're involved, whether you're interested, if you're not, why SCLC, the Southern Christian Leadership Movement, be established. And so people should just reference the fact that MLK was a part of other organizations that we were just, for whatever reason, is because particularly kind of star SCLC. I want to jump, because you're referencing the cross and the horizontal and the vertical. I want to give a shout out if you're comfortable with talking about it on air. You have burned your mortgage, you own it, and that happened under your watch. And I've always, as you know, we've been in school, but I was kind of an outlier, but maybe an outlier. You got to have people in the congregation that kind of keep you guys accountable. What would you say? I see myself to be a citizen advocate for the parishioners.
All right.
But my point is, from a really secular real estate standpoint, if you think of our church in terms of the buildings nationwide, that the brick and mortar, those, excuse the expression, but those anchor stores, those buildings, there's a real estate, if you think of the real estate value of all of our churches, you just add it up from an economic standpoint, the real estate value, the market value of all of our churches, whether we own the churches or regardless of mortgage or not, that's a significant sum. Right. Of money. And a lot of Black economists, separate from Black theologians, have not really dealt with that issue. That we do own, we have some liquidity kicking in, right? Some potential liquidity. So how do the anchor stores kind of merge or sell their services together, or do buying power, et cetera? That's really important. But basically, you do have to still, to own it, you have to not have that mortgage burden. Right. And you were able, why were you able so quickly? And I say this in the public shout out, I'll give it deeper, but no talking back to I'll tell Kurt whether it's the case may be his wife, but at any rate, to burn your mortgage, to own the property. Their churches here longer that they had to take out second, third mortgages, et cetera. So tell us about this, that back in terms of your business management. That's what I've never heard you say. You really probably have on this one.
Oh, good, thank you. Yeah, I am. So I've been at Friendship Church since 2008. I started as the interim minister and became the pastor in 2009. And one of the first things that we did was we wanted to make sure that the church was secure, and so we initiated a budget and a savings plan so that we could pay the church off early. And so we were able to do that over maybe a little more than a year. We began to save aggressively. One thing that I found out about people in general is that when you set a goal and they agree with the goal, people will work together. And so we worked together, and we were able to pay the church off a few years early and save probably thousands of dollars on a mortgage. That then freed up more money so that we could invest more in the community, so that the community could feel that we were there, know that we were there. And I think that, when churches take on a huge financial burden, that then takes away from their ability to be a tangible witness to the communities that they're served, because if you have so much overhead that you're covering in your property, then that's fewer people that you can feed or assist, so it takes away from your tangible witness. And so we wanted to be empowered to be able to make more of a difference. And so that was our goal. So in 2012, during the church anniversary, we burned the mortgage.
Again, kudos to you. That's so important. So important. And you referenced the different National Baptist Convention, et cetera, and others. Lindsay was in town still, you guys will still talk to one another? I mean,
Oh no, we are a part of that convention as well.
I didn't hear you mention that. I thought I would just kind of indirectly just kind of get that on the table there, Frank. You know what I mean?
Right.
So you had Dr. Curtis from Grace Baptist, and welcome up for your
53rd. We just had our 53rd church anniversary, and he came and preached a good message, and his choir came. It was a great time of celebration. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Talk to us if you can, because this has been something that's been on my mind for a while, and I haven't done it proactively, but give me a chance to begin doing it. When I say proactive, in terms of a film, a book, a regular series, your conversion experience. When it might be one episode, it could be a few episodes. I've asked a lot of folks anecdotally, Will Beth and I chatted with them about this, and Jeremy has graduated from the schools up at Harvard. She's talking about it. And your mother has kind of shared with me that as early as 2 or 3, she noticed some actual literal behavior. You're doing something after something that takes on this on a Sunday, and you're imitating at that point. This you feel in the spirit. But share with us either 1 or 2 episodes when this path, this calling, was important, because I think people need to know that whether they believe it or they believe it or not in themselves, there are people that have publicly testified to their life existence. And that's very impressive. At the very least, you can, as an outsider, respect that. But you think the person is charading or not.
Right. So yeah, I grew up. My childhood church was Union Temple Free Will Baptist Church, in the Dwight neighborhood. My pastor growing up was Reverend Dr. Herman Epps, and he was an awesome man of God. And so my mother only belonged to that church the 40 years that she was in New Haven. She's relocated to North Carolina, and she was very active in the church, and she taught Sunday school for most of those 40 years. And so every Sunday we were in church. Also, we attended events through the week. And I find before social media, people used to like going to church beyond Sunday morning. And so there were a lot of events that we would attend. And so we had an excellent Sunday school. And I can remember being taught about God earlier. Mother Lucille Brantley was my Sunday school teacher. And so I've always, heard these Bible stories about God. And so from that perspective, I've kind of always believed. But my
That's something about when you say always believe. I'm searching. I'm not being a psychiatrist or psychologist, but I'm looking for whether it's a dream, whether it's a sermon, whether it's an episode, whether it's a series of things. Your first recollection of when this glimmer of personality kind of redirection.
Mm-hmm. So I've always believed, but in our tradition, you don't baptize babies. You have to be old enough to understand original sin, and that that you need Christ for forgiveness. And so for me, that was about the age of 7. I think in between my 7th and 8th birthday, I had been asking my mom, could I, go up to profess that I'm saved, I'm a member of the church, and she would say, well, no, not yet. So finally one Sunday, I was sitting with my cousins when I was 7, and my pastor opened the doors of the church, and I went up because I wanted to, at that point, be official. And that happened, and then I had my 8th birthday, and then a couple of weeks later, after my 8th birthday, we had a baptism service, and I was baptized. And so, obviously, over the years, I've had some moments where I had to, kind of struggle with my faith and have some considerations. But there's never been a time when I said, okay, I'm not doing this anymore. I've been, consistent and being a believer.
Okay. Nice try, but I'm not going to give up.
Okay.
Let me try again. When did you decide that you wanted to enter the ministry?
Okay, now that might be a more titillating story for you. Okay.
Well, I mean, Harry and I are waiting. You've skirted long enough. We want the real deal here.
Okay.
People know me for a variety of things, but they definitely know that I can drill down and I don't get the answer that I want. I want to get the more sensational, the real deal here.
Right. Okay. So
I tried to ask that before, but thanks for giving me a chance to reframe it.
Sure. When I was in high school, I would wake up in the middle of the night, and I would read the Bible, and I would look at a scripture, and I would start writing notes about it. This happened to me in high school. And this happened for several nights. And so finally, one night, as I'm writing out notes from the scripture, it hit me. Oh my God, I am writing out a sermon outline. And so that is when I knew that, like, you know, a call was manifesting, that I was writing out these sermon notes. But I didn't say anything to anyone. And I said, let me just get away to college and maybe this will go away. And so I attended Morehouse College, which is known for black excellence in general, but they put out strong black preachers as well. And so during freshman orientation, the dean of the chapel, Dean Lawrence Carter, he asked there are about 800 of us there for freshman orientation. And he asked, you know, if any of you sense a call to the ministry, will you stand? And so I stood up. And so that was kind of my first declaration. And that was his invitation to invite us to be part of the chapel assistance. So I went to a few meetings of that. But that was my first public declaration. And so then, and my roommate was there. He was like, oh, okay, cool. And so then I said, well, I need to call my mom. So I called my mom. And I called my aunt, who's also a preacher. They were like, yeah, we kind of know. We were waiting for you to figure out. And so then when I came home for Christmas break, I told my pastor. He's since passed away 15 years ago. But I shared it with him. He was like, I'm not surprised a bit. So that was that story. So again, there's no thunderclapping, but there are more, you know, I guess decisive moments when I realized what was going on. Yeah.
Harry, we're going to keep on going on this thing. You did fairly well. The dreams, and the reason I appreciate your sharing with it, we're taking a little bit more time on this than perhaps there's a lot of things we can talk about perhaps, but I think it's really important for people to know it's just my kind of subjectivity in terms of Lindsay, and you mentioned Cathedral, and then you mentioned Bishop Brooks, and MLK, et cetera, that we all hear, many of us do interpret visions, dreams, inspiration, spirit, even a song or movie. And how you translate that in terms of the secular world is always a fascinating thing. The dreams that you had, did I hear you use the word dreams?
No, I would wake up.
So you'd wake up, and so you just wonder where that thought came from?
No, I would wake up and I would start reading the Bible.
Okay,
and then
so you're practicing activity,
right.
an objective activity. Okay, go ahead.
And then as I'm reading a particular passage, ideas would come to me, so I would start writing them down. And then over time, I realized that these were sermon notes.
So why did you not choose that to be a book or just publishing or a journalistic endeavor? I'm looking for the spirit, for the commitment, because to commit yourself, we may get a call as we speak. You may get a call on your phone right now, and you have to go to church, or you have to go to a hospital, or you have to someone. So the life of a public servant / minister is not too good. Anything can happen, right? So I'm looking for when that.
Right. So you can be a preacher without being a pastor.
Okay.
So, like, you know, getting the calls and the counseling, et cetera, that's pastoral work.
All right.
And so I was a preacher for a good 7 years or so before I became a pastor. I sort of redirected toward pastoral ministry because I sensed a call to serve and to help people, and for church work. Church work is in the marrow of my bones, so even if I was not a preacher, I would be working in the church. My mom was a church worker. My father on the end he passed away this year, the day after Christmas, but all of his family, on his mom's side in particular, they were church workers. So it's my mom, and then her mother, my grandmother. My granddad used to say, there's no one else at church. That's Leah stay and talk to the janitor, you know. And then her father, he was a deacon chair. And so I come from a long line of people who really, really love the church and are invested in it. So even if I was not a preacher,
so you had no other choice.
I would be active in church work. Right?
Sounds like you had no other choice. I'm gonna pray for you. You know what I mean?
Please
I'm gonna pray for your liberation.
Oh well, pray for me. I need prayer. So yeah.
And you gotta again the Tom Ficklin Show. I'm half joking and half serious. There's always a combination. Hopefully, in the show here with the Reverend Dr. Brian Bellamy, reading from Hamilton Ryan, all those sections. It's really, really a pleasure to chat with you. Any questions for me?
Yes.
Okay.
Talk
to my lawyer, Harry, first.
Mr. Ficklin,
Yes.
I know that
Call me Tom.
Tom, I know that you are a community archivist.
Yes.
How did you get involved in that kind of work?
The shoe is certainly on the other foot. and my answer is somewhat similar to yours, but I don't have as many of the explanations in terms of the external influences. I really don't know. So I tell people that when I was between 4 and Sunday school through 5 or 6 through 14, that I was busier then in my life. People seem to be busy now for the last 2 or 3 or 4 decades, but my recollection is that I've always been busy. I've always done Little League and all the athletic teams and Sunday school and the crossing guards and just student government. So I've always just been part of my mix. So I never perceived it to be a calling. Sometimes it's been habitual and even sometimes addictive. So now at this stage in my life, I really have to pace myself about just going to that automatic pilot. So I'm sure if I had videotapes of myself growing up, I could see my mother and my grandmother. There would probably be episodes where you could see their influence over me when I was small or inculcated that kind of discipline into my life. So my recollection is just it's been habitual, addictive. I certainly recall being so busy between 4 years old and 18 years old, more than any time in my life. I do remember my Sunday school teacher having really profound effect. Mrs. Hawley, I still can see her and her name. I love to lift her name up as the importance of Sunday school from an adolescent development standpoint. I've always liked books. I never went to the library. I was maybe 8 to kind of get a book on how to score tennis. Just a fascination. It's like the library card status. So it's been something. So people see me. People do whether it's a historian kind of standpoint, or whether it's a Vandersea kind of standpoint, or even this guy named Brian in Augustus, Washington, who have you ever heard of him? He's out of Hartford.
Okay.
And he's a photographer. The daguerreotypes before it was photography. So pictures are like John Brown, that you might have seen in 1856, 80s, the black photographers even around then. So I've been able, and Frederick Douglass talks about the impact of photography that just started there for us to see ourselves. So there are books Frederick talked about this and the pictures that we could see ourselves versus the white person seeing us. So I've just the visual arts, media, word development, video, photography, and communications. That's always been something that I've had an interest in. Even at the divinity school, I really took courses on media, church, religion, and economic development. So, fair question, man. I know that's not specific.
No, that's interesting. Thank you.
Yeah. So again, let's move to. Well, we're not going to cover some of the topics I had hoped. Again, you listened to Tom Ficklin Show and Reverend Dr. Brian Bellamy with me. Some of the topics were Black liberation theology. We talked about a little bit the church and trauma and the church's responsibility to the current situation in D.C. I think it's also something that's on my mind. People seeking help and they need it. Pastoral counseling is also important. Church politics we alluded to a little bit. But any of those topics kind of resonate with you as we kind of wind down?
Sure, we can talk about trauma in the church. First of all, I think in our community, trauma is layered because, first of all, you kind of have almost like, the idea that you're born with original sin. We're kind of born into trauma, into kind of racial trauma, right? And so at some point, we just like we have the age of reasoning, we get to this age where we realize people are going to treat me different because of the color of my skin. So we have, original trauma. And then we have, economic trauma, right? From being poor, being working class, for wanting to have certain things for yourselves and for your children, for wanting to have those things, obtain those things in a legitimate manner, but then not having any opportunities. And so you have that, but then you have these isolated incidences of things that happen to people in their growing up and in their day-to-day lives. And so what you then find is typically in a church, and really in any church, but especially in a black church, you have people who are walking around dealing with multiple layers of trauma. Then add to that, there has kind of been this idea in our community where, we don't go to therapy, right? We don't do that. Add to that, the economic component where many of us could not afford to go to therapy if we wanted to go. And so people have really turned to the church and particular to the minister and how they medicate these things. I was going to say deal with them, but we really don't. We don't really deal with them like they should, where, we discuss what happened and expose it and then take therapeutic measures. And so, people then will come and talk to the pastor to try to, at least organize their issues and how to deal with what first. And so, I mean,
what resources can you draw from? Someone kind of comes to you suggest this therapist or this agency?
Oh, absolutely, because I do not have any kind of like therapeutic license. And so I do Bible counseling, but once I see that the issue is therapeutic, I have, given consults for people to see someone else. And the reality of the matter is that sometimes people are open to that and sometimes they are not. And so people, I think many people, just walk around and deal with the trauma or live with it without really dealing with it.
Talk to us a little bit as we kind of went down, because you're how old?
37.
The 37. So, in terms of Robert Frost, let's hope that you have a few more miles to go before you move on to your next mile up in the sky and that kind of thing. So, I mean, that's relatively young for your experiences. What's cooking for you in your mind moving forward? Not that we want you to move to leave New Haven, but the Spirit does move in a variety of ways. So, I'm just curious, what's cooking for you as you're teaching, recently married, presume you have maybe considered some children that you're practicing.
Right. Okay. I don't think my wife would like that.
So just curious, at 37 and so accomplished with the school and now the doctorate and the church not having financial obligations. So just curious what kind of spending figure your head as you kind of wake up. What kind of dreams you now have? What are you thinking about?
Right. So I am excited for whatever God has next. I'm excited about what's going on at the church now, at Friendship Church, www.friendshipnbc.net.
Absolutely. Come on down and see you at 10, your service there.
10:45, right. The church is growing in a whole lot of ways, and I'm doing some research now for a few additional projects. They are a wonderful group of people to work with because when I came there, almost 10 years ago, all of the officers were old enough to either be my parent or grandparent. Yet they've been really open to new ideas, and so we've been able to get a lot done. So we're excited about some of the projects that we can't kind of take the cover off yet, but we have some things that are brewing there. My wife and I, we certainly would like to expand our family, so that's something. She is in residency at Bridgeport Hospital in OBGYN residency, so she has 2 more years, and then she has to kind of like cut a career path. So we will see what happens there. I'm still teaching at UNH, and I'm excited about that. But I'm open to other teaching opportunities as well.
Tell us a little bit about the topics again that you're teaching, because I want people to get a flavor of the show. You mentioned multi-layered, and I'm trying to call it, but just the multi-layered, the Brian multi-layered.
All right. No, so at the University of New Haven, for the last 10 years, I've taught the ethics sections most often. As you may know, the University of New Haven is well known for its criminal justice department and for forensic science. And so ethics then has become a requirement for graduation. So I've seen most of the students, that pass through. But I also teach intro. I'm going to do intro this spring. I teach the honors course for ethics. This spring I taught a course on Black moral thought, where we have considered how Black thinkers over the last 2 centuries have tried to understand what it means to be Black and to live out the American dream. And so that course was a lot of fun.
Well, we're going to on that note, in terms of the Black thinking and moral thought and kind of living and surviving and thriving, we're going to have you back in the fall. I know you're busy in the fall, but I want to have you back for all those academic shows.
Sure.
We talk about it. Really appreciate it. Harry, thanks for everything. This is the Tom Ficklin Show. We're all kind of concluded with Zach Carter, and really thank you for talking to Dr. Brad Bellamy, senior pastor, Friendship Missionary Baptist Church on Edmond Street in Hampton, and service start what time?
10:45.
Come on down.